Then I decided to pray again, and I remember praying again, and when we prayed that time, her ear popped. We all heard it pop, and she could hear 100% from her ear, and so she starts crying. Her
Wow.
kids that are my age see this, they start crying, and then everyone's like, "What is going on?" And then I'm like, "God is moving within our midst. Who else needs healing?"
Hey everyone, this is Kingdom Carriers. Today we've got Edson Ibañez calling in from Denver, Colorado. He's going to talk about his real estate adventures and some adventures with Jesus that are ongoing. So enjoy this conversation with Edson. All right, Edson, good to see you, man.
Yeah, man. Great to be here.
Yeah, this is Edson Ibañez. Super excited for this interview today. Edson, why don't you get us started off? Just like let people know who are you basically? You can give some personal side, some business side, but just kind of that high level flyover of who is Edson.
Well, hey, everyone. My name is Edson Ibañez. I currently live in Denver, Colorado, but I'm originally from Los Angeles. A little bit of background. My parents are immigrants from Guatemala, so Spanish is my first language. I mainly grew up in Los Angeles, but currently I do a few things. I'm a city planner for the city and county of Denver. So I do a lot of housing policy and rezonings for the city when it comes to affordable housing projects. I'm also a real estate agent. And so I help people think creatively about their homes and how they can pay their mortgage creatively through house hacking or adding more units and value add to their properties. But something that I've also do is zoning consultation. So I help churches navigate rezoning so that they can build affordable housing on their properties so that they can do it as a form of financial help, but also be very missional. So yeah, so it's like my work is a lot of affordable housing, but also working with investors to do creative things and folks that are wanting to be some sort of real estate investor as well, helping them navigate that space as well. So that's a little bit of what I do right now.
Yeah, yeah. Wow. Okay. So that's cool how everything kind of connects there. Like obviously like you have your kind of main full-time job and then real estate you do more so kind of like on the side, but it of course connects with the rezoning and all the knowledge that you have through there. And then helping churches, is that also kind of like an aside thing or is that part of your full-time job?
I kind of just stumbled upon it. I'm being Guatemalan. A Guatemalan church reached out to me maybe about 4 years ago and just said, "Hey, we're sitting on 4.5 acres of land, and we own it free and clear, but we only utilize 1 acre, and we
Mm,
want to figure out what can we do with the rest of it in terms of housing." And so that you know they just had no idea on zoning. They're in a basically single family zone district, and they wanted to rezone to multifamily. And so they didn't know anyone in that space. So they reached out to me and said, "Hey, I know that you understand zoning. Can you help us?" And so I started the process of helping them, which
yeah.
got me connected to a nonprofit here in the Denver metro area called My High Ministries, which I've started to work with them specifically on rezoning for churches and helping them navigate zoning.
Wow. Yeah. One question I love asking all my guests is what are some moments in your life that greatly impacted the trajectory of where you were going? So we could get personal here, we could do the business side, we could do both. But just as you think back through your life, what are some of those moments that you look back on and you're like, wow, like this is when, that changed my life or like, oh, I made this decision or I met this person. I just love to hear any of those moments.
Yeah, I would say one of the most impactful things of why I'm in the work that I am is, I graduated with a degree in mathematics, a bachelor's in mathematics, and I wanted to pursue a career in engineering. And so I was
Okay.
set on electrical engineering. That's what I really wanted to pursue, or applied mathematics engineering. So when I was graduating with my bachelor's in mathematics, I was looking at potential schools to go pursue a master's. And during that process, I would pray and kind of just continually ask God for wisdom and guidance. And that's when
Yeah.
every time I prayed, this thought would hit my mind of take a year off and
Mm,
give me a year just to get to know me more. And so like that just kept coming up every time I prayed. And finally I just said, God, if this is really you, then I'm willing to do this. But you have to convince my parents and you got to show me what's next. And so that's when
Yeah.
I met a pastor. I literally went to a church service. I met this pastor, and then the pastor offered to take me out to coffee that week. And so I went out to
Okay.
coffee with this pastor, and the pastor was like, "Hey, I know you're about to graduate. I just met you, but you've been in my heart every single day. I want to offer you an internship. Would you consider taking a year off and take an internship with my church?" And that, and not just that, you know, something that I had been praying is like, God, if you really want me to take a year off and do that, then give me free housing and tell me what church to do that with or whatever organization
Mm.
you want to do that with. And so this pastor's like, we actually own a fourplex and you can live in one of the units for free while you intern for us. It's like, obviously we can't pay you, but you
Yeah.
can live there for free.
Yeah.
And you have all your expenses paid. Can you please pray about this? We would love to mm, take a gap year. And so,
Mhm.
I was like, "I don't know this pastor that much. His service was really great. Um,
Yeah.
so let me pray about it." But I knew the answer in my heart was yes, that I need to take this year off. And so, I remember talking to my folks about it, and then, my mom was actually very like, "Yeah, that's totally fine as long as you go pursue your master's after this." And so I think that was instrumental for me because my passion now is to own small multifamily and give away one of the units to a church that is in the same
Mm.
position that I am. And, I've been really getting involved with a movement called redemptive real estate, which looks at, typically when you do an analysis on, a real estate property, you look at return on investment, return on equity, you look at some of these concepts of cash on cash returns
Sure.
and and then you kind of analyze it. But this redemptive real estate really looks at what's the return on kingdom. Even if your return on investment is lower, what's the return on kingdom on these type of assets you're trying to purchase? And so, they're huge on like we should look at creatively partnering with God and what does that look like to reach the tenants for the Lord while you own
Wow.
this property. Um, and then understanding that there's creative ways of like offering units and partnering with organizations like Apartment Life and um, other organizations that look at putting missionaries, like urban missionaries, into apartment complexes, or getting creative of like what is the needs of the asset that you're buying and how can that benefit the people that are working there, living there, and the community around that, whether that's units, whether that's daycare, free daycare, and then using that opportunity to preach to the parents and kids. It's really creative of like what that looks like. It kind of like that experience working with the church really opened my eyes of like what you can do with, you know, purchasing real estate. And so during that year, I just remember, I got to go on mission trips. It was really awesome. I really did a lot of homeless outreach, building tiny homes for the homeless. Like I got to do really
Wow.
awesome things. But I remember one time I went to a pastor's meeting, like a regional pastor's meeting with my pastor there. And one pastor in particular that I met, he prayed over me and basically prophesied over me.
Mhm.
And it was interesting because he basically was saying, God is wanting you to study cities and how cities grow. And I see God
Wow.
showing you maps of cities and seeing you how he wants to grow cities. And so that was just like, I was like, oh, that's interesting. And then 2 weeks later, I go to another church for another meeting. And then that pastor prayed over me and basically prayed the identical prayer without, it's like God speaking to me directly, and that pastor
Wow.
basically said, "God is showing you maps. God wants to show you maps of cities and how cities grow." And at the end, that one says, that pastor said, "This sounds like urban planning. Have you ever considered that?" And I'm like, had no concept of what urban planning was
Yeah.
or city planning was at that time. So I started doing some research and started praying about it, and I
Mhm.
realized like this image came to me when I was praying when I was 12 when I went to a summer camp. And at the
Yeah.
summer camp, someone had given me scriptures as a kid. It had given me like Isaiah that talked about repairing the city and like God is looking for an
Mm.
architect. And so it was like all these scriptures about city building throughout scripture. And it's like, um, that brought all these memories back. I'm like, what is this, God? And so I decided to do some research and found out that there was a local university called Cal Poly Pomona that was like kind of down the street from where I was at. that had an urban planning program. So I just prayed and I said, God, if you really want me to pursue this, I'll apply to the master's program and see where it goes from there. And so I started doing some research and found out that that master's program had a study abroad option to go to China. And so I just said a simple prayer. I said, God, if I get into this program, if you really want me to pursue that, would it be, I think it'd be awesome if you can send me to China. I would love to just experience that
Yeah.
study abroad option. And so I ended up applying to several engineering schools and then an urban planning master's program. And so I remember when I submitted all my applications, I submitted them. And I remember hearing God say, "You're going to get rejected from the other schools." And
Mm.
so I'm like, okay, if this is really you, God, then I'm going to get rejection letters from 5 schools. And so, sure enough, a few months later, I get rejection letters from 5 schools. And now I'm just waiting on this one school if I'm going to get into this master's program. And so while I'm waiting to hear back, I'm starting to get discouraged because I'm like, I haven't heard anything.
Yeah.
And I had a buddy that was living in Israel. And so he had been in Israel for about a year and he didn't know that I had applied for a master's program for urban planning. But he basically gets back to the States and calls me and said, "Hey, man, I know I haven't talked to you in a while, but I've been in Israel, but I want to tell you that I had a dream of you last night and I want to tell you about it." And so he starts to tell me about this dream and how he saw me in China and I was there because I was getting a degree studying cities. And he's like,
Wow.
"And I saw you on the Great Wall of China." And then I woke up and he's like, it was so random, but does this mean anything to you?" And I'm like, "Dude, this is confirmation." Literally prayed and said, "God, I would love to go to China. It'd be so awesome
Yeah.
to be on the Great Wall." Because the part of the
Yeah.
program talked about you get to go on the Great Wall of China and you're studying cities. You're
Oh my
studying urban
gosh.
planning and
Yeah.
architecture. And so that was confirmation. I was like, "Okay, I'm getting into this program." And sure enough, I get into the program. A year later, I go study abroad for a summer in China, which was an amazing experience. Sure
Wow.
enough, uh, sure enough, like a year before I graduate the program, the city of Azusa offers me a position to be a city planner with the city of Azusa. So that kind of started the trajectory. And so like through that, I see God give me the idea of, redemptive real estate, but
Yeah.
also I see God's hand on studying cities and how cities grow through city planning. But like, and then having that individual when I worked for the city of Azusa, that investor giving me the idea of like the importance of real estate investing and,
Yeah.
starting my research and study of like understanding investing. And so, you know, part of my daily routine now is like looking at YouTube videos, going to meetups, like understanding how I can be a better use of like the investing world and like how do I grow
Yeah.
my portfolio by helping people grow their portfolios,
Yeah.
but also
Yeah.
like understanding like how cities grow through policy and government and politics
Yeah.
as well. And so that's kind of like giving you an idea of like how that has
Sure.
played, how I've seen it play throughout my life.
Yeah. Wow. Man. So hearing those stories, I mean, first of all, just amazing, like to get that confirmation, because there's a lot of different routes you can take in life, right? There's a lot of things you can do. And when you get that sort of like direction and then confirmation, that's just, gosh, it's gotta be such an amazing feeling. I'm curious, have you had other experiences like that in your life, business or personal, where there's just been like so much confirmation from God or like clear prophetic words that you've, stepped out and risk and then it's come to fruition? Just curious, like at any other points in your life, past or present, any other God stories like that?
Yeah, I have a few that come to mind. Um, I would say the first one that comes to mind is a few years ago. This was like back in 2015. God put it in my heart to gather my whole family to fast and pray just for more of Him. And I remember in like 2015, I text and called every single one of my family. I have about 110 family members in California and even bigger in Guatemala. So I remember
Wow.
texting all my family and saying, "Would you join me to fast and pray for more of God? And would you join me to fast?" And I remember that very clearly of like, okay, we just want more of God. Not like I don't
Yeah.
want God to do anything. I just like, God, give us a heart and a hunger for more of you.
Mm-hmm.
I remember asking all my family, and about 20 family members showed up, which I thought nobody was going to show up, but 20 families showed up. And we met together and just pulled out a family tree and prayed for every single family member in our family
Wow.
and just
Wow.
asked God, would you begin to move in our family? And would you begin to do miracles of family members coming back to you? And I remember that was just a really powerful experience. And then a
Yeah.
few months later, my niece is born without a left lung or a diaphragm.
Oh my goodness.
And so they immediately had to sever her main artery, and so her parents signed paperwork saying that she'll never use one of her main arteries because they had to connect her to life support, and so she's on life support. And so this is my cousin, and so her mother, my aunt, called me and said, "Edson, I know that you just gathered the family to fast and pray. Can you gather the family to fast and pray for this baby?" And so either God takes her home, or God does a miracle, or God does something to teaches shows the doctors what to do creatively.
Mhm.
And so, I remember, like, I reached out to all my family again and said, "Would you gather at my aunt's house to fast and pray for this little child that was just born?" And so I remember 25 family members showed up, and we decided to pray, and God really pressed it on my heart to pray for all my family that gathered there. So I remember praying for my family, and one of my aunts had lost 90% of her hearing in one of her ears, and so I remember laying hands on her, and we all prayed and nothing happened. And so then we just
Mhm.
kind of did worship. Then I decided to pray again, and I remember praying again. And when we prayed that time, her ear popped. We all heard it pop, and she could hear 100% from her ear. And so she starts crying. Her
Wow.
kids that are my age see this, they start crying. And then everyone's like, "What is going on?" And then I'm like, "God is moving within our midst. Who else needs healing?" And so one of my aunts had gotten into, I believe, a car accident and hurt her shoulder and couldn't lift her hand a certain way. So we prayed for her, and God completely touched her and she could move her hand. Another aunt had back pain, and God completely touched her back. And then I would say the most powerful one was my uncle started sharing about how he was molested in front of the whole family, how he was
Oh my
molested.
gosh.
He could not forgive. And so we ended up doing a forgiveness session, and he's crying, asking for forgiveness for the guy that did this, but also,
Wow.
believing for justice, that God is the God of justice, but
Yeah.
also forgiveness, to not carry that resentment and all this in his heart. And he's crying, being touched by God's presence, and his girls, are crying. It was just a really powerful experience that I never forget. Because I've seen God do some miracles, but to see the
Yeah.
miracle within my own family was just so powerful.
Yeah.
And I just remember, like, a week later, they opened up my niece for another surgery, and they find out that she has a brand new, um, left lung, a brand new diaphragm, basically grew in, and the artery that they had signed that she would never use for the rest of the night connected. Like, the stitches disappeared and it connected. It was just the most radical miracle.
Wow.
Here in the States, right? We hear about this in like different countries
Sure.
and stuff, but here in
Yeah.
the States, and it was just a really powerful experience that, like, um, even doctors from different units would come to see my niece and say, "Who is this child where this miracle?" Like, the doctors wrote miracle on the paperwork because they just couldn't explain it. And so I just think of that where it's like, that's a for me, it was just shaped of, like, the power of prayer and family coming to prayer
Yeah.
and fasting. Not to say, "God, do this," but it's just like, "God, where's your heart? How
Mhm.
do we partner with you,
Yeah.
and let your will be done?" Because
Yeah.
our prayer was, God, take the baby home if that's your will. Heal the
Mm.
baby miraculously, or show the doctors what to do. Not for us to, like, God, this miracle, you do this miracle, but it's more of like, God, how do we partner with you, and then let your will be done. And so I would say
Yeah.
that's a huge miracle.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. Man, what a story. Wow. And so were there I'm curious like the effect that that had on your family because obviously, something like that everyone hears about it. So like were there members of your family, who believing and did that affect them in some way? Or I'm just curious like what were the kind of reverberations of that incident on your whole family?
Most of my family's Christian, but a lot of
Okay.
them don't walk it, right? A
Okay.
lot of them are professing Christians, but their lifestyle does not show
Gotcha.
actual evidence of actually walking a Christian life. And so, you know, we would have gatherings where someone prays or we would go to a church service. And so that's kind of like a normal upbringing for like a lot of my family and cousins.
Mhm.
And so it was more of like, sharing with the family. It's like, yes, this is awesome, but the real miracle is what Jesus did on the cross and the fact that he
Mm.
wants to have a relationship with us and he wants to talk to us.
Yeah.
Yes, for us. And so that was more of like a teaching moment for me,
Yeah.
like especially for my cousins and some of my uncles, where it's like God is very relational and he wants to be a part of our journey, even if it's hard. He wants to be present. And he wants to talk to us. And so I think um for me, it was just mainly like those conversations with a lot of my cousins, aunts, and uncles, which I still do to this day. Some of them
Yeah.
call me and we pray together, or some of them will call me and be like, "Can you talk to your little cousin, who's we see him drifting away, and can you encourage him?" And so
Mm.
some of it, I still see it to this day. But yeah, it was more of like just education of like, I know that you grew up in Christian circles, but and grew up hearing God. You got to make this personal. And so it was
Yeah.
more of that, and it's like, I believe God allowed this to happen so that we can have a personal relationship with him, not just a one-time encounter, because it's not about a one-time encounter, it's about an actual walk, personal
Yeah.
relationship. And so that's kind of where
Wow.
that helped a lot, kind of like
Yeah.
talking to my cousins about that and aunts and uncles.
Yeah. Wow. I'm kind of reminded right now of, like, the story of Joseph in the Bible, and I guess I just see a lot of similarities to, like, how, Joseph, was a blessing to his whole family. And, maybe they all, of course, rejected him when he was younger, and, maybe that doesn't apply, but Joseph rose up and then got, like, favor in government, and it's interesting that, like, you're working in government. You're also just clearly been a huge blessing to your family, and I know that this is not something that you're just, like, taking credit for. "Look at me," like you were just seeking more of God, but it's significant that you were the one who called those meetings, who said, "Guys, let's do it. Let's fast and pray," and you're the one that they sometimes reach out to, like, "Hey, can you reach out to so and so?" Like, so it's just really, really cool to see kind of that, like, leadership position that, or maybe not position, maybe that's not the right word, but just it's clear that you are positively impacting your family. And I think that's going to be something that's felt for generations, bro.
Yeah.
So, man, I mean, I feel like, yeah, you probably have more of those stories, and we could just probably go on for hours, honestly, and hear more of those. But I'm curious, you mentioned right at the beginning that your parents were immigrants to this country. And I'm just very curious, obviously immigration right now, kind of a hot topic in our country. And so we don't have to get political or anything unless you want to, but I just am more interested in hearing your experience. Like, what was that like? Because I have no clue. And so I would just love to hear like your experience growing up. What was it like being the son of two immigrants and trying to establish like an identity and, make a life for yourself here? Yeah, just would love to hear anything about that.
Yeah, I think you'll hear a lot of these stories where it's like Spanish was my first language. That's kind of what I spoke at home. And then my parents made it very clear, like, you learn English in school, but Spanish you speak at home. So growing up, you know, it was always that in the middle. It's like you're not fully American, but you're not
Mm.
fully, for example, Guatemalan. And typically with my friends, you're not fully Mexican or that country. Because whenever I would go visit, my cousins would be like, "You're not Guatemalan, you're
Mm.
American." When I'm here, I always felt like I'm not American. It's always like I was always in the middle. So it was always that identity wrestle growing up of like, where do I actually fit in?
Yeah.
But similarly, like just the practical side, like I remember growing up and helping my parents translate documents. I don't even know half the things that I was doing or trying to do or filling out paperwork for them growing up. So I just remember doing that. I still do that, you know, to this day of like certain documents that they need
Yeah.
for, you know, I I'm the point person for a lot of that stuff still.
Yeah. Wow.
So I just remember that growing up and kind of those wrestles growing up. I think I personally felt like I always struggled in school
Mm,
just because, I didn't know I didn't have anyone to actually say, "Can you help me?"
mhm.
Uh, Especially like English topics or like homework assignments or essays.
Oh,
I
man.
just remember like I didn't have anyone. And I just remember like my parents were like, "You can figure this out." But I'm like, "You help me?" Like
Mm.
I just didn't have that. So I just kind of like learned to like, I have to figure this out. It was not until like I went to actually college that I'm like, oh, I can use resources that are here. Cause it's like I grew up and I didn't know about that there was resources that I can use or library that I can use.
Sure.
And that, parents that were working 2 to 3 jobs growing up. And so I just remember, even though I got good grades, I remember I was forced to take summer school because my parents couldn't afford me staying home and like
Oh, wow.
different things. I remember, I was like, "Mom, I got, like, straight A's," but she's like, "You still need to go retake that same class for summer school." I didn't know, like, you can do certain things growing up, which, now I have younger cousins, nephews, and nieces that, like, you know, going through the master's program that I'm able to at least educate their parents. Or my
Mm.
cousin be like, "Hey, this is things that you should think about. Here's some financial resources to consider.
Yeah.
Here's the power of compound interest if you start investing into an IRA,
Yeah.
529 accounts, and things like that where I see like I didn't have no one and still don't have anyone to look up to from a family
Mhm.
standpoint. I've seen that as now like a leverage that I can use and be a resource for my family, which
Yeah.
now I'm not educating folks about like, hey, you need to own your own house and stop renting. And if you can't afford it, you should consider buying a duplex and then renting out part of it so it helps pay for it, or get a
Yeah.
house with another family member or friend and have them help pay the mortgage, and so that way you're growing equity on your home.
Yeah.
So I'm like trying to teach them creatively, like family. So for me, it's like um, understanding that I have parents that come from a different country, that come from extreme poverty, and both my parents have like an elementary school education. They
Wow.
came over here not knowing anything or the systems or how to work stuff. And,
Man.
for me with immigration, there's certain folks with the mindset that came, I didn't come from for a handout. I came to work, and that's kind of my parents. They're like, I didn't come for a handout. I wasn't on any social um benefits. I came to work. And so growing up, we're like, I didn't like the resources. Like my parents were like, you can do it on your own. We're not
Mm.
taking any benefits from any. And that kind of translated to like, nowadays I'm like, there's actually free resources in schools and libraries that you can take advantage of. But growing up, my parents were like, no, you can figure this out. We're not taking any
Wow.
handouts. Right.
Yeah.
And so that kind of translated to some of the upbringing as well. Of like, my parents just didn't know and they were working all the time. I remember as a teenager, even like young, 8, 9 years old, going with my mom to help clean houses and, helping her do laundry or cleaning stuff as a kid,
Yeah.
I remember during summer vacations, like, that's what my mom had to do, and I had to go with her. So I just
Mhm.
remember that, and that's also a feel for me now where it's like, I gotta work hard, and that's kind of
Yeah.
the work ethic that my parents taught instilled in me.
Mhm.
And so that's just kind of the upbringing that I kind of have, and I'm super thankful that
Right.
I could have grown up in Guatemala, but I grew up here, and I'm super thankful that I have these experiences now, and was given this opportunity to be in this
Yeah.
country. So like, I'm just really thankful, and like, my parents are really thankful too.
Right. Right. Yeah. Wow. So that work ethic and kind of like it even sounds like some of the creativity and like I mean when you were little you just like had to figure stuff out and it probably wasn't fun at times. But now it seems like you're really good at figuring stuff out. Like, one of your strengths is like being creative and like, hey, how can we do this? How can we do that? And maybe some of that came out of your story of just like your parents not wanting to accept a whole lot of handouts or anything like that. And so they were just telling you, hey, you can figure it out. And you did.
Yeah, not the
Man.
best, but I did, right?
Right, right. Yeah. And here you are. So, what would you say have been some of the biggest challenges? And, again, personally and in business, we kind of span that bridge. But as you think back on your life or even just the past few years, what are some of the big challenges that you've faced?
I would say health. has been the biggest challenge. Not
Okay.
me personally, but those around me, right?
Sure.
Um, and then just seeing the ripple effects of, you know, how that can impact so much.
Mm.
For me personally, it's caused me to be like a really conservative when it comes to my investment journey.
Mm.
So, for example, my wife is a midwife, makes decent money. Um, and about 3 years ago, my wife has been dealing with chronic migraines where it was like 28 days out of the month. She was just had to be in bed, closed rooms,
Wow.
lights just affected her. And I just remember like, you know, trying to hustle in real estate, working full time and then
Mhm.
trying to take care of kids, like
Yeah.
my kids was just, on my mental health was just straining so much and just exhausted. And, we were seeing specialists, we were seeing nutritionists, naturopathic doctors just to figure out what is going on. And that just got really expensive fast because certain treatments were like 10,000 out of pocket, wasn't covered by insurance. So we went
Man.
through different routes of different insurance. How to sell one of my rentals and use the profit of that just to pay medical expenses and medical debt. And so that caused me to like look at things of like even like clients that I help now, they're like, if one of you were to get sick, you need to be more conservative on your emergency fund. You need to think
Mhm.
about avenues of like if something were to happen. And can this investment operate on its own without,
Yeah.
like you having to access some of those resources or funds. And so it's just like it's really caused me to be more conservative in the investment side, but it's also been very difficult because I've seen God do some radical healings, but I haven't seen him do it with my wife. She's significantly doing a lot better, but uh, yeah, I haven't seen the full healing for that. It
Yeah.
used to be $28 a month. Now it's like 5 or 6, which is for me, it's completely radically amazing.
Yeah.
But she still
Wow.
has those days where she just needs to be in bed all day and I'm with the kids. And so I've for a while, like my mental health was really straining, but I ended up doing the podcast was all about neuroplasticity and how to rewire your brain through Thanksgiving and how to practically walk out. Like First Thessalonians talks about being thankful in all circumstances and situations and rejoicing. And I'm like, how do I rejoice when my wife is suffering and
Gosh,
it's
yeah.
caused financial hardship, medical hardship? And then just like the practical of life of taking care of kids, where I'm like, my wife kind of helps take care of a lot of that stuff in the household. Like I'm doing laundry all the time, I'm doing dishes all the time, I'm taking care of the
Mhm.
kids, I'm doing all the meals, and
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm exhausted. I need help.
Right.
I feel how a single parent feels
Sure.
at times, and I'm also have to be like the primary caretaker for my wife. And so just seeing that and being more, conservative now moving forward on like what does that look like with in every area and like now like when I'm doing deals I like pencil out just on my income alone and not my wife's like whatever
Sure.
my wife she works part-time finally now but whatever my wife brings in that's just like saving or investing or giving.
Sure.
And so that's just super like that's that hardship has caused me to be more conservative, and that's basically what I mean nowadays. And the importance of being conservative in your because before I'd be like, okay, I can stretch things out here,
Mm.
like I can lean back on my wife's income. But now I'm like, no, with health, it's caused me to be really and now I'm just really take situations that are hardships and turn them into gratitude statements of and then thankful statements. It's like even though it's really hard, I'm thankful that I still have my wife. Or
Mm.
people lose their spouse to cancer or other situations, and so it's caused me to like look at things differently and be more thankful. And it's like, Lord, even though my wife's sick, I'm thankful that my kids are healthy.
Mhm.
It's really hard, but I'm thankful I still have a house.
Yeah.
Um, and you know, I'm thankful that even though it's everything's so tight, I'm thankful that I'm still making ends meet even
Mhm.
though I don't have discretionary funds to do other things. And, I'm thankful that maybe I can't afford to go somewhere with my kids in this season, but I can take them to the library and I can take them to go
Mhm.
fun things and free things. And so that's caused me to be more creative in that sense and just be more thankful, like, you know, it's been like I think 2 years since my wife and I started doing this podcast of Thanksgiving. And it's really changed our perspectives on a lot of things, and really changed how we pray and see things of like being thankful and starting off our day or ending our day with gratitude statements, and then turning
Yeah.
our hardships and heavies into thanksgiving statements. And sometimes even prophetically, like sometimes I've been having some hard stuff with my sister's
Mm.
kids have been very difficult. My sister passed away 7 years ago, and then
Hmm.
her kids have been with an abusive father. Sometimes my hardship is like, Lord, I'm heavy that I'm not seeing breakthrough from my nephews.
Yeah.
But I turn those into gratitude statements like, Lord, I thank you that you care more about this than I do, and that
Hmm.
your justice will prevail. And it might be until they're 18, because one of them wants to come live with me when he turns 18.
Wow.
And so, I'm able to look at a situation, and even though I might not see, you know, the light at the end of the tunnel, I can at least prophetically declare and be thankful and be like, thank you, Lord, that you will find a way, even though I can't see it. And so
Yeah.
that's been really helpful for me to like just take that verse of like be thankful in all circumstances and do it that way. And so that's kind of what I've been thankful. It's like even with my wife's health, Lord, I thank you that I haven't seen the healing, but it's gotten better. And eventually one day she will be completely better.
Wow.
So that's been
Yeah.
super transformative from my marriage, transformative for just my business and work and just family. It's been really transformative for me.
Right. Yeah. And that podcast, are you guys still doing that?
We still do it.
Okay. Wow. That's amazing. What's the name of it?
It's the podcast with Liz Bagwell, and I can send you the link and you can kind of tie it.
Yeah,
Well,
I'll add that to the show notes. Yeah. No, that's awesome. And did you guys decide to start that like, hey, we just need this personally, so we're gonna like run after this and kind of document it and let other people hear about it too? Was that kind of like the vision, or was it also like a huge prophetic word or something that kind of led to starting that?
no, we just, you know, part of this has opened our eyes to be more compassionate to people
Mm,
dealing with chronic illness. And so we have a few friends that have Lyme's or have other chronic illnesses where God hasn't healed them. And so some of them have been dealing with 10 years. And so one of them specifically, he's been dealing with Lyme's, was the top real estate agent in the condo market here in Colorado, making like 60K a month on
wow.
transactions. That's how much he was making. He was in the millions, some monthly of the transaction volumes. But he had Lyme disease and hasn't worked in over like 12 years. But he's the one that started telling us about neuroplasticity and rewiring our brain
Mm,
with Thanksgiving. And so he turned us on to this neuroscientist, Liz Bagwell, who was like, hey, you should listen to this. And so my wife started listening to it, and she's like, this is changing me. You need to listen to it too. So, we started listening to it together, and that's really what started changing us. We did like several days several weeks in a row. Every day we would just listen to a podcast and just following it through. And now we just kind of implement a lot of the stuff from the podcast and stuff
yeah. Yeah.
into our everyday life.
Yeah. Well, that's incredible. And yeah, I love that topic, neuroplasticity and just the research that's been done showing that like, yeah, we really can change our brains. We're not stuck. It's not hopeless. We're not just victims. Like we can have, we can help this amazing functioning that God designed in our brains.
Yeah.
We can kind of lead it along and change that. Yeah. Wow. Okay. So, yes, you mentioned that, in terms of just big challenges, one of them, if not the biggest one recently has kind of been like the health and dealing everything with your wife, and especially in light of the fact that you've seen amazing healings happen, which you just told us about earlier, like with your niece. And so that's got to be incredibly difficult to know that that is possible and you've literally seen it happen. And then you're just like, but why not here? Why isn't it happening here?
Yeah. Yeah. And, I've also seen it in business and real estate investing, the hardships.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like the first property that I purchased was a single family house that I converted to triplex. But I feel like everything that could go wrong went wrong
Oh
on
my
the
gosh.
deal. And so the way that I structured it was an FHA 2 or 3K loan, meaning you know, FHA, first time home buyer loan, 3.5% down on a property. And um, it includes the renovation funds too. So it's like,
Okay.
so, you can purchase it. This works up to a fourplex. So you can purchase a single family house and renovate that house, or you can purchase a single family house and renovate part of the house to add units, or you can
Mm,
purchase a fourplex and renovate all four of the units. And so this is a loan that you can get with just 3.5%. So this is one that I advocate a lot for because it's like you can get in the door and renovate a property and and just increase the value of the property significantly.
yeah. Yeah.
And so I did the adding units, and so part of that is, like, you have to hire a HUD consultant and then a contractor. So I hired a HUD consultant and a contractor, and then everything could go wrong with that HUD consultant and the contractor.
Yeah.
They didn't pull permits. They started doing work, and I kept asking them, "Where's the permits? Where's the permits?" They never gave me the permits. The project just sat there for, like, 10 months while I'm making mortgage payments and I'm paying my rent, as well somewhere else. And so it's like
Oh, man.
I was just so cut thin. But I really felt like God said, "Go for this." And so I went for it. And, I'm like, went through all my savings. It was just kind of like I didn't even know how I was making each month, like my bills. I couldn't even afford groceries. It was just so intense. And then finally, like, the contractor finally pulled permits, started work construction, was going so slow to do everything. The deal was to make it 3 units, and they barely were trying to wrap up the second. They finished the first unit, wrapping up the second unit, and I fired them. And, they took me to court.
Oh, man.
So I went to court with them, and then they said that they needed all the funds, even though I was like, very clear evidence of breach of contract,
Yeah.
kinda advocated that, they're out of their timeline. They didn't finish the scope of work, so they shouldn't get any more money.
Yeah.
And so the judge completely sided with the contractor in good faith and gave them pretty much the majority of my renovation funds. So left me out
Uh,
to dry where I'm like, I still need to finish 1 unit and part of the other unit's still not done. And so I maxed
wow.
out my credit cards and literally finished the second unit, was renting 2 of the units, and then was doing the third unit. And once I finished the third unit, I'm like, I need to pay all this off. And that was like 2.5 years, basically hell with this project where everything went down and I sold it, but I ended up making like close to $300,000 in profit, you know? So I'm
Wow.
like, even after I paid off everyone, right?
Yeah.
Even after paying off myself from, like, using loans and, you know, remainder of, like, there was a few contractors I told them, "Once this sell, I'll pay you." And so and then just made a profit from that, and I'm just like that opened my eyes, I'm like, "Wow, this is." I lost a ton of money from, like, those monthly payments of having no renters, and
Mhm.
I lost money from going to court,
Yeah.
and all this stuff, and there's, like, maybe a year and a half where I'm like, "I don't even know how I'm gonna make payments."
Wow.
So I had, like, 2 renters in there that was covering everything,
Yeah.
um, and then, like, I sold it and I'm like, "Wow," like, I've lost so much, you know, with the renovation and everything, like, it was close to, like, $100,000 just lost. But then I made it a lot and just walked away with so much that I'm just like, "Wow," I saw the power of real estate and also the upside of the market during the time that I'm like, "Wow, this is really powerful to add units," and that's kind of what I educate now and just kinda steer folks of, like, this is how you pick a good contractor, and now I know the importance of mentorship and having folks that have been in the field, and I have folks
Sure.
and the more that I've talked to investors that own multiple units and more than I do, all of them have stories like this where, like, the contractor ran off with money,
Mm,
you know? And it's like, that's part of the investing, like, journey of, like, you're gonna have ups and you're gonna have downs, and it's important to have the right context to mitigate those risks and understanding
yeah.
that. And so it's like, even though it was like, I felt like it was a complete failure when I walked out, I'm like, actually, this is like, I made money on this and I was able to purchase some property from that, and
Yeah.
then pay off some debt, which was amazing.
Yeah.
And so that journey also helped me to understand, from the spiritual side of it, that was really hard because it's like, I'm like, this contractor it's my enemy, you know? Like, they're
Sure.
stealing from me and they've
Sure.
stolen from me. How can I
Yeah.
forgive them, God? How can I love them? And, I asked God to really give me a perspective of his justice. Cause I was like, I want justice. I want that person to go to jail. I want to recoup all my money.
Yeah.
And I got to a point where finally God really is like, justice should look like however God wants it to look like.
Mm,
Because it's like for me, my justice looked differently, and it was really like how it impacted me. And it got to a point where it's like, God, I want justice to look like however you want it to look like, whether that's salvation would actually come to that individual. And at the end of the day, this property really doesn't belong to me. My finances don't belong to me. Everything that I own belongs to you if I'm truly a follower of Christ. And so it's
yeah.
really against you. And I'd rather like see your justice. And if that means someone gets saved because of this, your will be done, God. And if I
Yeah.
never see it in this lifetime, I'm okay because I know that you're the best judge and that you will hold this individual accountable for this. And
Right.
so your will be done. And so that process really helped me to navigate, like, be more conservative and do better due diligence, but also, like, you know, get an aspect of God's justice that I would never had experienced if I didn't go through that. And, when I talk to other investors, they all share similar stories. Like, they're like, yeah, someone stole $500,000 from me. Someone stole $1 million from me when you start
Wow.
doing bigger deals.
Yeah.
And so, and they're like, and we just bounce back because real estate's that powerful if you're able to hold it for a
Hmm.
certain amount of time. And so I just seen the power of that. And that's kind of where I educate folks. I also teach classes nowadays too on zoning and share my story of
Yeah.
like just the power of real estate and the power of having the right people on your team, um, to actually help mitigate some of that. It's the same
Right.
thing when you're investing in other assets, stocks, like there's ups and downs. You can lose money, you can make money. It's
Sure.
just, education, having the right people on your team, and then just having good perspectives on certain things.
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, it definitely sounds like you learned practical wisdom as well as spiritual wisdom through those experiences because you learn like more about accepting that God is God and we are not, and things don't always look the way that we think we're going to. I think of like the book of Job when, I mean, that's kind of a mysterious book, but obviously everything bad happened to him that could go bad, and the whole time he's just like, I don't really know why, like I've been good, I've been blameless. I don't, and then his friends are like, it's your fault, and eventually God shows up, and it's like one of the big lessons I think is just, yeah, God is God, and we see in part, he sees fully. So wow, dude, that's awesome. Yeah, again, I feel like you are a wealth of stories that we could just go on and on, I'm sure. But we'll kind of start to sort of land the plane here. I'm interested, like, what's kind of like a current project or just thing that you're super excited about, as you look down the line here to the next, months or even years. What's something that's super exciting coming up for you?
For me, just personally, I have my third one on the way. And so,
Congrats,
we'll
dude.
be here
That's
in about a month
awesome.
and a half. And so we're just super excited to expand the family, and then we've started the process of foster care as well.
Yeah.
This is just something that I'm passionate about. I used to sit on a anti-human trafficking board for an organization, and part of that required a lot of education and going to conferences. And I remember going to a conference several years ago, and during the conference, they kind of gave statistics, which has changed, but that statistic stayed with me, which says at the time that said 70% of human trafficking cases that we know about in America come from the foster care system of kids aging out. And so the
Whoa.
conference kind of ended with, you know, what does it look like to take care of the orphan in their distress is taking care of foster care kids, and you should become a foster care parent. But more importantly, if you can't be a parent, you can be a mentor, which you meet with them
Yeah.
once a month or twice a month. And so that started my journey of becoming a foster care mentor, and so I've been a foster care mentor, but now my wife and I have started the process of foster care parent, where we want to be parents to kind of an older child, and just be that resource for them and be family for them because we know when they age out, they might not have anyone, and that's when human traffickers will actually target
Yeah.
foster care youth
Yeah.
aging out because they don't have anyone. And you hear
Sure.
those stories of like, hey,
Mhm.
they thought I was be good as an actor, thought I'd be good at this, and they're in a different state, and I want to go check it out, and then they never hear of them.
Yeah.
And so part of me is like, let me be a dent there, God. And so that's something that's just we started the training and we're almost wrapping up on that training soon with my wife. And so we're hoping to get that going. And so that's something that I'm really passionate about doing. And so that's I would say that's really what my wife and I do passionate about because
Yeah.
we take that verse in James that talks about like true religion in the sight of our Father is to take care of the orphan and widow in their distress. And
Hmm.
so I'm just like, what does that look like for me? And a prayer my wife and I have always said is Matthew 25 talks about Jesus separating the sheep and the goats. And then you know, they're like, Lord, Lord, I never knew you. You prophesied, you saw healings, you saw me do
Yeah.
miracles. God's
Yeah.
like, you never knew me. And they're like, where were you, God? And God says, I was hungry, you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, you gave me
Mm.
something to drink. I was naked, you clothed me. I was a stranger, you took me in.
Yeah.
I was a prisoner and you came to visit me. And so my wife and I's prayer is always like, how do we practically do that? And then it's like the stranger part. We can take a stranger in, one of these foster care kids, and still
Yeah.
do James 1. And so we just been, what do the steps of that look like? And so that's kind of where we're taking those steps to do that. Of like, okay, God, we're going to take those steps to do that.
Yeah. Wow. Man, I love that, and I definitely wanna talk more with you about that. Continuing, because my wife and I, actually just got foster care certified as well.
No way. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah, yeah, dude, it was like a good year-long process. Because trying to do it with kids, it's like you gotta find time to take all these classes and submit all these papers and home studies and all that, and so, but yeah, so we're just, like, kinda new into that journey as well, and just not sure what God's gonna do with it, but excited to give these kids a place to stay that's safe, because there's a lot of really tough situations out there.
Yeah, and it's not easy. And I know it's not for everyone, but I know
Yeah.
that's just on my heart, similar to
Yeah.
yours.
Yeah. Dude, I love that. I love that. Okay. Well, can we end with like a lightning round? It's like a few questions that are just kind of like short answers, just kind of like a few things to sort of wrap this up. Okay. All right. First question. What's your favorite movie, past or present?
Lord of the Rings.
Oh, dude.
The trilogy.
Love
I
it.
watch it at least once a year. It's just and I'm considering doing like the orchestra. I've never done that before. Like you get to watch a film and so it travels around the country, but there's one coming to Colorado soon, so I'm considering if my wife lets me, but it's like 3 hours long, right? But
Yeah.
extended
It's a
versions. Yeah.
commitment. It's a commitment, dude. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man, wow. I love that. Okay. If you could only eat one snack for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Nah. Right now, I've been really digging buffalo chips, which are the protein. I forgot the name of it, but it's like they're protein style buffalo chips.
Okay.
They're made out of chicken. So I'm just in love with those. I only buy them at Costco if it's on sale, but I just love those chips.
Okay.
It's my
Yeah.
favorite.
Oh, dude. Yeah, we go to Costco too, man. I love the random similarities of our families. Okay, who is one of your like biggest heroes who is currently living?
I think someone that's been impacting me for the last 2 years is I would kind of a pastor, but ex CIA guy, Jamie Winship.
Oh, okay. I don't think I'm familiar.
Jamie Winship, he's a motivational speaker, pastor, ex CIA guy. His whole big thing is, understanding our identity and
Hmm.
getting down to um, what is God wanting us to know and what does he wants us to do? Instead of asking why, just say, God, what do you want us to know and what do you want us to do? And
Wow.
he was in the Middle East trying to pacify Muslims. And he just has some radical stories of
Oh man.
just doing that, but he's big on just like guys, it's simple. Like, we just need to
Yeah.
keep having a relationship with God and asking Him, well, what do you want us to know and what do you want us to do? And just go do that.
Wow. Yeah.
Uh, so yeah, he's just been my favorite. He's big on identity. And so I like to listen to his podcasts. He
Okay.
puts out.
Yeah. Okay. And, when the day comes and you meet God face to face, what's one of the top questions that you want to ask him?
Um, there's a lot in my life, but I think the one that just comes straight to mind is like, can I watch a film of you explain the road to Emmaus? You know, when Jesus appears to two disciples or two individuals as they're walking, he shares the whole history um, of the law and kind of like brings it back to Jesus
Yeah.
himself. I would love to get a picture or even feel like I'm there hearing him just
Yeah.
explain. And just, I've always thought about like, what would that look like with him actually sharing everything from his perspective? Um, and so that's just something that I was like, if I get up there, I'm like, can you show me that? I want to see it.
Oh, dude, I love that. I love that answer. Okay, just a couple more. What's one thing you want to improve in your business, the business side of you over this next year?
I think social media. I lack in
Okay.
social media.
Okay.
And I'm starting to have conversations with folks of how to revamp that
Sure.
and start making it more just, a presence.
Yeah.
I think for me personally, like just my online presence hasn't been really effective. It's been word of mouth
Okay.
and establishing maybe a website. It's kind of like where I've done just a lot of word of mouth and I have like website through my brokerage and stuff like that. But I think my own personal branding is what I'm looking
Yeah.
at to
Okay.
focus.
Yeah. No, that's great. That's great. And then same question, except in your personal life. What's one thing you want to improve on in your personal life over this next year?
I think incorporating better spiritual disciplines. I think
Okay.
having little ones, it's just been all over the place. And maybe
Yep.
you can attest to that, where it's like
Yeah.
one week I'm like getting up at 6 a.m., spending time with God before everyone starts.
Yep.
And then my workout schedule has been all over the place as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think one, I want to be better disciplined, but lately, and I'm about to go into the season, which you're familiar with, where it's like sleep is just all over the place.
Right.
And lately, my kids have been getting up at 3 in the morning, and because my wife's pregnant, I'm the one going with them,
Man.
and they just rush into the room and say, "We wanna sleep with you," and I keep telling them, "No," but I've
Oh,
been
man.
getting up, and I'll be with them.
Yeah.
So my schedule's been all over the place, so I just wanna be consistent, even more consistent, because I feel like when I'm exhausted, I don't spend as much time with God, or I'm
Yeah.
not praying as much, and so I'm just and it's okay, like, I'm not gonna beat myself 'cause it's not about performance, but
Sure.
I wanna be
Right.
consistent. And so I feel
Yeah.
like that's something I'm working on as well as working out. It's like it's been all over the place, but I'm like, okay, now I'm starting to be more diligent. So
Yeah. Yeah, dude. I'm right there with you. Yeah, having young kids is a crazy, crazy season of life. And so I imagine that God knows where we're at with all that. He knows a
yeah,
thing or two about us and can cut us some slack on that side of things. But yeah, man. Well, dude, Edson, this has been awesome. Again, I feel like you could literally just share stories for probably hours. But where can people find you? Whether they're in the Denver area or just anywhere in the U.S. Like, if you want to share any of your social media handles or any other projects that you're working on, if people want to like connect with you or hear more about what you're doing.
yeah. If you want to connect with me, I'll put my email in the bio, and
Okay.
then I'm starting a Instagram, so it's real estate Ibanez, where I'm starting to kick off some certain things, certain projects that I've worked on or currently working on, and so that's kind of where you can find me.
Okay. Awesome, man. Well, Edson, thank you so much. Really appreciate you. And yeah, I think people are gonna enjoy hearing some of these stories. So thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.